I start.
はい。じゃあ、こんにちは、ムラデンさん。Hello, Mr. ムラデン。
Hello.
はい。テツさん、よろしくお
はい。
願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
Welcome. Thank you for teaching this class and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm very excited and I'm very happy. Thank you. And 皆さん、こんにちは。本日は、ムラデンバンヤツさんをお迎えして、ボスニア・ヘルツェゴビナの先史時代から今日までの美術史というテーマで講義を、していただこうと思っています。ムラデンさんは、スカルプスカ共和国現代アート美術館で学芸員として働いて、おりまして、ベルグラード、国立大学の哲学科を卒業されて、今は、バニャルカの芸術大学の講師も兼務しております。日本ではなかなか聞く機会のないお話だと思いますので、楽しんで授業を受けてほしいと思います。準備よろしいでしょうか？はい。Are
は
you
い。
ready? ムラデン and 哲 OK?
いえいえ、ちょっと、僕も少し喋らないと仕
お
事にならない
願いします。
かもしれないので、
はい。
話させていただきますと、
お願いします。
今回は村伝さんにお願いさせていただきました。で、というのも、僕もヨーロッパのチェコに住んでいながら、東、南、東南ヨーロッパの方っていうのをあまり知らなかったっていうこともあるし、多分、皆様も多分往々にしてそうかもしれないけど、ボスニア・ヘルツェゴビナっていうレベルで、地理的状況とか歴史とか、もちろん芸術についてのことも知らない方が多いんじゃないかなと思います。実際、例えばググってみても、ボスニアと芸術の関係なんてなかなかこう検索しても出てこないような状況で、
うん。
やっぱり何よりここ20年、30年レベルの近いところでもの紛争のことであったりとか、その前のユーゴスラビアが解体されて、6つの国が解体されてっていうことだったりとか、その前にもいろんな歴史があって、オーストリア・ハンガリー帝国の時代があったりとか、その前
うん。
はオスマントルコに占領されている時代があったりとかって、本当に地政学的にもいろんなことが起きてて、激しい、激動の国なんだと思いますけれども、皆さんが知っていることっていうのは多分20世紀中盤のこの紛争、戦争からね、最近の紛争のあたりが強いのかなと思っています。だけれども、このスルプスカ共和国にしかり、ボスニア・ヘルツェゴビナにしかり、本当に美しい素晴らしい国で、芸術文化においても本当に村伝さんが紹介してくれると思いますけど、
うん。
昔からその国独自の文化があって、芸術があって、僕たちにはなかなか、知ることができないような興味深いことがたくさんあるということを思います。ですので、今回は村伝さんにお願いして、講義をしていただくことに、させていただきましたと。という
はい。
ことで、早速、村伝バイアツさんにお願いしたいと思います。Alright, thank you so much for coming today, Mladen. So
Okay.
please go ahead and we sometimes comment on something and but yeah, basically it's all your time, so please go ahead.
Okay. First of
Alright,
all,
cool.
I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to teach a very lengthy class on art in Bosnia and Herzegovina from prehistoric times until today. It would be interesting to showcase more of the contemporary art, but I'm afraid that if we don't know the entire context of history of art in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's a bit hard to understand the things now. So I took this very generic title called Art in Bosnia and Herzegovina from Prehistoric Times Until Today to see if to show you what Bosnia and Herzegovina actually is, how it developed through millennia, and if you have any interests in particular time frames that we are going to talk about today, feel free to reach out to me, and I will either connect you to some of my more expert colleagues, or I will give you some more resources myself. So basically, to start, we need to locate Bosnia and Herzegovina to say what is Bosnia and Herzegovina, where it is located, and what are some of its key characteristics. So Bosnia is located in the middle of Balkan Peninsula, as you can see in the southeastern region of Europe. It has been part of many empires and countries, and we will talk about its role in history throughout millennia. And today it's a republic split into the two entities, one being called the Republika Srpska, which is marked yellow on this map, and the other Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is politically divided in 10 cantons, with the capital in Sarajevo and many cities, many large cities throughout its region. It's mostly a mountainous area, but it kind of is split between two geographic regions, Bosnia, which is like the northern part, and Herzegovina, which is the southern part, with very different climates, Herzegovina being more Mediterranean and Bosnia more continental. So that's how basically the art somehow developed differently in different periods. Key characteristics of Bosnia and Herzegovina is that is unfortunately still a very divided country, but we are hoping for a better unified, better position for its citizens, and it's still looking out to its looking out for its identity, core identity, and the problems will be known once we go through its history. Basically, the oldest presence of people in Bosnia and Herzegovina have been recorded in Paleolithic times, as in most of the world. In these locations, Kladar in Gornji Svilaj, Kamen near Mount of Usora, and so on, which you can see on this slide. And Paleolithic tools were found in many different locations. Art in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as you can see, started really early, which we can see in this Paleolithic drawing in Badan Cave near Stolac. Stolac is a small town in Herzegovina, and we can see that it's really old, some 14 millennia to 12 millennia BC. The big artistic production, if we can speak about it, came in the younger Neolithic period. Balkans in the Neolithic times has been very vibrant area. People were migrating from the so-called Fertile Crescent Moon of the Asia Minor, and were using Balkans sort of as a main route to populating the entire Europe once the Ice Age finished and once the big glacial areas were becoming warmer. Balkan Peninsula became the in Neolithic times one of the first European agricultural societies. And of course, once the earlier settlements developed, the artistic production started. So in this time between 7,700 to 3,700 BC, we can see a lot of figurines being excavated in various locations throughout Bosnia and Herzegovina. This so-called goddess, which is really characteristic for Neolithic sculpture in this area, has been found in Lug near Gorazde and is currently held in National Museum in Sarajevo. One of the biggest and most important Neolithic locations is Butmir near Sarajevo. A lot of pottery, sculptures, and ceramics were found in this location, and it has been a mixture of different cultures that were either from Danube Valley, who reached out to Bosnia, or near Sava River, which is the northern natural border of Bosnia and Herzegovina today. We can see on this figurine some gender characteristics representing a female figure, and most of the figures were female because the fertility goddesses were something that was worshipped in these earliest times. And we can see some geometric sketches of dresses, shoulder straps, necklaces, and which were emphasized with lines and stitches, also held in National Museum in Sarajevo. Special characteristics of Butmir is, of course, the figural plastic. This is one of the earliest representation of figural anthropomorphic images in sculpture in the Bosnian and Balkan Peninsula. And a lot of these figurines have been found on this locality. A number of preserved heads of human figurines attracted special attention, and they were characterized by their realism, which was unusual for Neolithic times in this period. This is somewhat unique and original phenomenon in this region. In short, we can close the story about prehistoric times. I just wanted to talk about how the Bosnia has been settled from its earliest recordings of prehistory as we know it today. In Bronze Age, new migrations came. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a slide that shows different types of Illyric tribes, which this map represents. But as you can see, a lot of them inhabited the area what is ex-Yugoslavia or Western Balkan region, Bosnia being this middle region here. So we can see a lot of the different tribes which shared a unique language and unique culture, which originated from the famous Hallstatt culture, which was centered in what is modern-day Austria in the Alps. Special locations will be emphasized on Yapodi tribe, which were located in this region near the modern-day town of Bihać, and Daursi tribe in the valley of Neretva River in Herzegovina. As we can see, the Yapodist urn from the vicinity of Bihać on the location of Jezerine is one of the most important locations where Yapodic culture has been found, and the richest locality of this characteristic. This is excavated from a necropolis, and it proved that they did cremation, both and skeletal, and both burial and cremation afterlife sort of burial grounds. Urns were ceramic vessels, and we can see these really static images engraved in this Yapodic urn, representing a series of dressed figures in some sort of ceremonic ritual. Very linear style, characteristic for Yapodic and Celtic tribes of the times, which probably had a lot of connection because they both migrated more or less in the same period in these areas. Yapods and Illyrics were especially good in metal casting. So the items found in graves in Jezerine or in Pounje region, Pounje meaning near Una River, had a lot of ornaments next to red-fired ceramics, but a lot of bronze jewelry, fibulae, pendants, horse head decorations, drinking vessels, and so on and so on. Very intricately and with very fine designs, and it showed that the Yapodic culture had already class systems, because some of the graves belonged to the aristocracy, and they were the treasures found in those graves were a lot richer in items. Daurson is a location of an old city of other Illyric tribe, Daursi, in the Neretva Valley, which is very rich agricultural land and with very nice climate even today. And it's no surprise that that this tribe settled, especially in this region. Being close to the sea, it had a lot of connections with different cultures throughout Mediterranean, especially Greek, who already in the 3rd century BC were in its highest levels. And we can see those influences on military equipment and clothing of the Daurson tribes. As we can see in this drawing, this is how they look, how the warriors of the Daurson Illyric tribes looked, and we can see a lot of influence of Greek military equipment on their tribe. These are some of the bronze helmets found in this locality, and they are currently kept in Museum of Herzegovina in Trebinje, which is town close by ancient Darsum city. Especially one grave containing jewelry box and a goldsmith's mold from the late 4th century was important for this locality because it showed that they had somehow some kind of industrial production of metal objects. Illyrics in the Bronze Age were master craftsmen when metal is concerned, bronze, later on iron. And in this special, as we call it, treasure box, which, as you can see, weighed slightly more than 34 kilograms, a lot of important
It's
objects.
such big.
It's
such big, yeah?
Yeah. And it was really important for us to understand how developed and sophisticated this society was. Today you can see it in National Museum in Sarajevo, of course, where the most of archaeological finds from prehistoric times and ancient times are being kept today. We quickly move on to the Roman period. After the Illyrics conquered and settled what is today Bosnia, the Romans came in the 3rd century BC. As you know, the Roman expansion was really big throughout ancient times, and they first came in 3rd century in these parts, but they had trouble conquering this land, and maybe I should talk about it now. Bosnia is very mountainous area, and it's very hostile for invaders. The autonomous people of Bosnia, who knew region very well, could very well defend themselves from foreign invasion. So it took a lot of force, efforts, logistics to conquer this wild region. It was covered in a lot of rivers, a lot of forests, and a lot of hills and mountains. So Romans took very, very long time to conquer the Illyric tribes. And as we can see from the 3rd century BC, it was pretty much 3 centuries until the Romans had completely conquered and took under control what is Bosnia today. And we can see they started from modern day Split, from Salona and these Adriatic coast area, which is today's Croatia, and they slowly moved into the Bosnia, conquering it bit by bit. The last resistance, called Baton's Uprising, was finished in 9th century AD. So when Roman Empire was already an empire, and that's when the Bosnia and Herzegovina region became a province of Roman Empire, and they started colonizing it and developing its industry. Bosnia is very rich with raw materials, especially silver. So it was really, really important once they conquered it to keep it that way. And from Roman times onward, we will often hear and you will often find in literature name Bosnia Argentina, meaning in Latin silver Bosnia. So as Romans did in other provinces, they started smelting mines. As you can see, silver, copper, iron, lead, and salt. And for faster development, the Romans also did a network of roads which connected different military camps that were spread out across Bosnia. And it made easier communication and travel through this hard region. And eventually, out of these Roman camps, a lot of cities developed through Roman times and later on through Middle Ages up until today. So basically, most of contemporary Bosnian cities have some sort of Roman archaeological site in their either city centers or their near vicinity. It's also a region. Bosnia is also very rich in spa resorts, with springs with healing water. So it was very interesting for Romans to settle near those springs of healthy water rivers.
Even now, still the spa exists?
Even now, yeah, but
今でも温泉あるん
fortunately
で。
the infrastructure is very outdated and it needs a lot of investments to be what it was previously. We can talk about that later. Yeah. These are just some of the examples of Roman plastics that you can see. So typical classical Roman plastics influenced by Greek art, representing Roman gods or Roman tombstones characteristic for the entire Roman Empire. The sites that had really rich mines also held villa rusticas. Villa rusticas were buildings that were that held some sort of aristocratic population and were often decorated with floor mosaics. So a lot of them, especially in modern day in Srebrenica and Skelani, two locations, we can find a lot of floor mosaics of villa rustica representing typical motifs such as fish, wine, and some sort of gods that were worshipped in that particular region. Also, in the 2nd and 3rd century AD, Rome got under a religious influence from the Middle East. So a lot of Middle Eastern cults were merged with Greco-Roman pantheon, and different, different mixture of religion spread throughout Bosnia. So we can see in Srebrenica, which is mining and administrative center, first of all, because it had a lot of Srebrenica in today contemporary language means basically silver city. It was located on Drina River, and Drina River could by boats, you can ship a lot of silver throughout river systems throughout the entire Roman Empire. So a large number of Roman buildings and urban settlements, mosaic necropolis were found in this region. And a bronze hand found near Gradina, in Gradina near Srebrenica, testifies of one of such cults of the god Sabazi, which was spread throughout Roman Empire, and it's one of the orgiastic exotic cults of Roman Eastern provinces. These are also some of the mosaic patterns found in this region, and I would say that these houses were really sophisticated. They had their own sewages. They had heating because, as I said, they were connected with the natural hot springs, and through the system of pipes, they could heat entire houses pretty much like they do now in Iceland or as I understand in some of the islands in Japan. So using natural energy to heat their homes.
In which century are you doing it? From the 1st century?
This is from 1st century until 4th century AD.
もう1世紀から4世紀の間にこう金属のチューブがあって温泉の熱で家を温めることができたというどんだけの技術。
多いね。
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just going to show some of the typical ancient Roman altars, meaning that they were a lot of temples represented, with some of them have inscriptions, some of them not. There were also bronze sculptures, this one being really small, but it's really subtle and really nicely done statuette of Roman goddess of the hunt, Diana, found near Trebinje and dated from 1st to 3rd century AD, and held in National Museum in Sarajevo. The statue probably had an arrow done from different material, probably gold or silver, but as you can see, it is lost today. Since this was a region that was kind of a connection between East and West, a lot of religions easily spread through this region. So once the Christianity became the state religion of Roman Empire, it quickly crept in also in Bosnia. So in the next few centuries, we will talk about Christianity and how it shaped art in Bosnia and Herzegovina in a lot of different ways. The earliest appearance can be found in these basilicas. Basilicas were the buildings that were previously used for administrative purposes in Roman Empire, either as courtrooms or as marketplaces, so like civil structures. But once Christianity became legal in Roman Empire after Milan Edict and when Emperor Constantine declared Christianity a legal religion, basilicas became what we consider today contemporary churches. So this is one of the drawings of the earliest Christian basilica found near Zenica, which is really heart of the Bosnia. And we can see the typical, this alcove, which used to hold the local city magistrate, and it was later, during Christian times, transformed into altar space, where the main rituals of Christianity were held with this, how do I say, parapet. With this construction, which was usually covered in decorative reliefs, which separated the holy place from the place where the worshippers would stand in front of it and follow the masses. Also, one of the reconstructions of the early basilicas, this one from Breza, dated in 6th century AD, more or less looked like this. These structures would become differently shaped. Basilicas were mostly, once the Christianity split into Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, the churches, the architecture of the churches would also change. And after the Great Schism, as we call it in Christianity, in 1056, basilicas would be kept as a model for Catholicism, while the Eastern Orthodoxy churches would mostly have like central type buildings with the cross as its construction basis. This is one of the newest locations. This is near Banja Luka in village called Vakinci. One of the early basilicas, which were dated in 4th century AD, and several large basilicas were found, and it said that it had the bishop's place, so it has been important for the worshippers, but it was destroyed in the 6th century under the Avar and Slavic attacks. During the Great Migration of the peoples, this region would be settled by Avaric tribes, which were one of the Mongol tribes who traveled together with Slavic tribes, and the Slavic ethnicity is what has preserved until contemporary times. Also, what is really interesting about Bosnia is the Mitra cult. Mitra was a god from modern day, from Persia or modern day Iran, who was really popular with Roman soldiers. And since Bosnia was the border of the Roman Empire, a lot of these temples to Mitra, dedicated to Mitra, were found in Bosnia. And these temples were usually dug underground with this special relief called Tauroktonos, as you can see, showing Mitra slaying a bull. This is the best preserved Mitreum in Jajce, still open today, showing the battle of Mitra and the bull. And several of those Mitreums were found throughout Bosnia, meaning that this cult was really, really strong in Bosnia. And it's a pity that only the reliefs were found, but these were like the main altar pieces for this cult. This one was found near Bihać, and this one was found in Konjic. And as you can see, it has different. This was probably done by the best sculptor, as you can see, but also we can see that there were like differences in artistic level and in artistic quality, but they were all important, and we had some kind of
this is nice.
Yeah, this one is really nice, very small and really stylized, showing only the essence of the cult itself. Today in Konjic, also central Bosnia and Herzegovina. So as I was talking, now we slowly are merging into the Middle Ages. The Slavs migrated to Bosnia in this period from 5th, 6th century AD together with the Avars, and were assimilated with the local population, but they kept their cultural identity and, most importantly, their language. So Slavic languages became pretty dominant in modern day Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the entire region of ex-Yugoslavia. As we can see, they had their own burial rites, and a lot of these graves were found showing that they were master craftsmen. They did these metal ornaments, stirrups, horse equipment, weapons, and so on and so on. Typical for this period of time of the Great Migration of peoples. Jewelry was very fine, as you can see on these gold earrings found in Bugojno, central Bosnia and Herzegovina, from 9th to 10th AD, and some of them from 12th century. Bosnia being the, as I said, somewhat of a wild region, it was very also hard to, the Slavs adapted to the geographical region really fast. And unlike Serbia or Croatia today, Bosnia had some of its mixture which was unique in arts and especially in every aspect of life. It adopted the old ways of the different cults, and the Christianity had its own form in Bosnia called the Bosnian Church. But it was also influenced from the Eastern Orthodoxy and both Catholicism. One of these, one of the belts that was found, which is really nice and really nice artwork, as we can see in these gold ornaments, shows that it was done for someone who was a Christian. But what is most important, it says Tedgis Faber me fecit, meaning in Latin that Tedgis, the blacksmith, made me. This is one of the earliest artistic signatures found in Bosnia and Herzegovina, today kept in National Museum in Sarajevo. And what we also see is the product of the early Carolingian workshops in the Rhine region. So we can see that the communication between very distant regions of Europe were being kept alive, and objects made in contemporary northern France and Germany could be found in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is what I talk about when I talk about the Middle Ages. So the main source for researching this period, historical source, is the paper written by the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII Porphyrogenitus. And he wrote this for his son as sort of the instruction on how to rule the empire, and that's basically the name of the paper. It's on the administration of the state, or De Administrando Imperio. This is a paper where he talks about which people live there, and he mentions different Slavic tribes such as Serbs or Croats who rule the region, and this is one of the most important historical archives and data that we have about this region from that time. The other, one of the earliest written documents is the Charter of the Bosnian Ban Kulin. Ban was a title sort of, not really a king, but below it, some kind of a prince or something like that. Bosnia was not a kingdom still, and it was even not a country as we know it. It would become Bosnia later on, Kingdom of Bosnia under Tvrtko Kotromanic, and it was divided between Hungary, Croatia, small Serbian kingdoms, or Byzantine Empire throughout these Middle Ages until Ban Kulin, written this text, which shows us that there was some kind of local administration inside of Bosnia, and they had the authority to regulate the trade relations, especially with Dubrovnik. Dubrovnik is a really important trade city that we can find here. It was something like similar to Slavic Venice, because it was a free independent city. It was a republic, and it was very rich, and trade relations with Dubrovnik were important for all of the rulers of the neighboring kingdoms. It would remain a republic even throughout Ottoman times until Napoleon abolished it and gave it to province of Dalmatia at the time. We have two copies of the Charter of Kolyban, one of the most important historic written documents of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and one is kept in Dubrovnik archives, and one in the Academy of Sciences and Arts in St. Petersburg, Russia. There were also different written texts about it, and most of them were talking about the so-called Bosnian Church, which was a special type of Christianity, influenced both by Eastern and Western Christian churches. Both saw them as heresy, and both wanted, basically it was a fight for power, and both East and the West wanted Bosnia to go to either Orthodox or Catholic Church in order to rule it more easily. So in the times to come, Herzegovina would be populated by the Orthodox population, while the northern parts, closer to Croatia and Hungary, would be populated by the Catholic Christian population. They would both wage so-called small crusades on the Bosnian church, and it was finally abolished sometime when the Ottomans came. In this slide, I just want to say shortly that until the beginning of the 14th century, it was occupied by different feudal lords, the Pribir princes, Šubić, King Dragutin of Serbia. It had a lot of political and military engagements of different pans, and it finally became independent under the Ban Stefan II Kontromanjić, as you can see at the beginning of the middle of the 14th century. And it began its territorial expansion, mostly because the other neighboring kingdoms were in decline. Such development gave Bosnian state better organization, better economic power, and with the good relations with Hungarian kings, Ban Tvrtko finally became king of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and he was the only one who could rule the country with stability, because Bosnian feudal lords were very powerful and fighting each other, and that's why the country was really hard to govern, even if they had a king of their own or some foreign king. Basically, the power, political, economic power, lay in the lands, or lay in the hands of small feudal lords. Something typical, if I understand, in Japanese history of the shogunate times, if I'm right.
Yeah, it's right.
These are some of the remains of the churches of the Bosnian kings. We can see typical, this was probably a Catholic church with these typical Western-oriented plastics and decorations. There were a lot, in the Middle Ages, there were a lot of fortified towns, small or big fortifications with towers or churches inside or outside them. And throughout every major city in Bosnia and Herzegovina, you can still find better or less preserved remnants of these fortifications. These are some fragments of the tombstones of King Stjepan Tomaš from the 15th century, dug out in Bobovac, which was one of the centers of the Bosnian state at the time, near Sarajevo, and it's one of the earliest portraiture of the, unfortunately, as you can see, only kept in fragments. But we can see that they were like in individual portraiture sculpture being done at the time. As I was saying, only Tvrtko Kotromanić managed to rule Bosnia as a king sovereignly, with entire power concentrated in his hands. After his death, the lords across Bosnia and Herzegovina again divided the country and ruled with more or less power over their region, one of them being Hrvoje Vukčić-Hrvatinić, who ruled the Herzegovina region, and town of Jajce, which we can see in this lovely photograph with these lovely waterfalls, and I encourage you to visit it if you come. And Jajce is also the location of the Mitreum, so it was an important administrative center, was one of the important cities of the Bosnian kings. In it, we can see the remnants of Basilica, of Church of St. Luke, with the bell tower that survived from 13th to 15th century, which was turned into a mosque after the Ottomans came later on. In Jajce, also in this period, we can find a very unique architectural constructions, which were these underground catacombs, burial grounds, still open today, carved from the living rock, and it's something amazing that I encourage you also to see. In the eastern and southern parts, feudal lords from the Kosača family ruled. This is the old town of Blagaj, which is really, really well preserved. And this is the typical Herzegovina region, very poor for agriculture, unless it's near Neretva River, but very rich in stone. So a lot of stone materials and sculptures were preserved in this region. Also, the earliest printing industry started in modern-day Gorazde, in this monastery of Saint George, where the first printing house was opened. These were some of the beginning of 16th century. The first religious books were printed in this area with these typical decorations for the called flags and initials, typical for the Eastern Orthodoxy church, found in written texts before printing was invented. So what makes the cultural heritage of Balkans special? It's different civilization mixed in this region. So we have a lot of different variations done uniquely here. As I was saying, the borders of the Eastern and Western Roman Empire were on Drina River, which is in contemporary Bosnia. Eastern and Western churches were fighting over this region, which left it both rich in Catholic and in Orthodox cultural heritage. We can see the Byzantine influences in religious paintings from these fragments of frescoes, and also some of the Romanics and Proto-Gothics, which we found among other localities in western parts of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Dobrun Monastery was one of the centers of Eastern Orthodoxy, which was part once of the Serbian Empire, and one of the feudal lords, Pribil, built this church, and we can find, so this is typical what you will find in Eastern Orthodoxy paintings in medieval times. You would usually have a portrait of your sovereign, in this case the emperor, with his insignia, with scepter and the scroll which says that he's the king. The members of Serbian ruling house were all proclaimed saint by the Serbian Orthodox Church, so they have this aureoles around them, depicted with a ruler and his wife and their son. On the other side, usually the feudal lords, which we distinct them by the inscriptions, and they are not saints, but they're just like people who invested in building of churches, and of course, consecutively the paintings, were representing the models of the church, which they usually carry like a small model in their hands, and they are presenting it to their feudal lords, who are like the medium between God and them. A lot of also written and documents were saved from this period, usually written in Cyrillic or in Bosančica, which is other form of Cyrillic inscription, with very rich in illustrations and very colorfully various. These you can find these hybrid creatures like basilisks, griffins, a lot of mythological creatures painted at the beginning of each either gospel or beginning of new chapter of the books. What is really unique for Bosnia and Herzegovina are these tombstones, which are somehow hard to pronounce, but they're called stečci. These are the tombstones that were produced mostly in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but they could be found in Croatia, Montenegro, and Serbia, so the neighboring countries. And they were found in really remote areas, and they weighed several tons, and they were really decorative. Some of them had primitive reliefs, some of them had really fine decorations. At the beginning of 21st century, these were recognized by the UNESCO and proclaimed World Heritage Sites. I will talk about World Heritage. Bosnia has 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and stečci are one of those. And they could be found all over Bosnia. And I will show you with these photos just how remote they are. This is the necropolis at Čengiće Bara near Kalinovic. This one is Radmilovića Dubrave near Bileća. And you can see that a lot of them have really different decorations. This one is Maculje near Novi Travnik. This is steček by the guest Milutin. Guest is a title of the member of the Bosnian church. And initially they were thought they were the tombstones of the people who belonged to the Bosnian church. But that theory has been disapproved because we have a lot of symbols representing the cross, and the Bosnian church didn't worship the cross as a symbol. So the theory is we still don't know who made them, but who ordered those, or who were the people that were buried underneath, because they were aristocrats, they were common people, but they were really unique for Bosnia. This is now we see several types, one of them being a slab, and these were like the most popular. The slab would be this one, like a typical slab of stone, sometimes decorated, sometimes not. A chest, which is this one, and a chest being this one, and sarcophagus this. So different types, and you can see a lot of them were preserved. The motifs on them, more than 5,000 were decorated. And they have like bent twines, rosette, crosses, shields, swords, bow and arrow, figures from scenes of hunting, from scenes of fighting, scenes of what we call in the local language kolo, which was like basically a dancing ritual where people would hold hands and dance around, dance in the circle. Which is probably some sort of magical and ritual, magical burial ritual, which still survives until today in local folklore. Some of them have really nice decorations. Some of them have like Gothic elements with these alcoves. This one is in Radinja. Some of them have animals on them, with scenes of hunting on the back. This has a fantastic creature. We don't know what it is, and with these wines, so really mysterious. These were like deers with birds, and they really looked like prehistoric. We don't know why they made them so stylized, and so I will use the word primitive, but I don't consider them primitive. I consider them unique artistic expression from this time, because I think they were done by uneducated sculptors who really wanted to show the ritual aspect of the ceremonial burial rituals. And this is the scene of Kola that I was talking about. People standing in circles holding hands. This one is from some sort of a warrior. We can see its attributes with the bows and arrows. And basically, this is like probably a warrior's necropolis. And they were mostly looted, but in some of them we found the rings and a lot of metals. There was some archaeological research done recently, and DNA were showing a lot of princes and feudal lords known from the sources, written sources from the 15th and 14th century. Some of them were covered in mantle threads, and you can see these fabrics also representing mythological creatures in National Museum in Sarajevo. Also, there were cups from different cultures, and meaning that Bosnia also traded in the medieval times with different people. I will quickly move on because we don't have a lot of time to just say a little bit that Franciscan order of the Catholic Church was really active in Bosnia and Herzegovina in this time. They built a lot of monasteries. Some of them survived until today, and some of them were abandoned or destroyed during the Ottoman occupation. One of the most beautiful is in central Bosnia in Rama, and they were adapted throughout history, and not a lot of them were kept in their original medieval form. So after military campaigns in the 15th century, finally in 1463, the Ottoman Empire conquered Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it will remain so until the end of the 19th century. And this shaped Bosnia in many aspects. First, there were a lot of mosques being built. Either old churches were converted into mosques, but really special type of Ottoman mosque with these Ottoman minarets were built throughout Bosnia and Herzegovina. One of the most important lords of Ottoman Empire was Gazi Husrevbek, who built a lot of mosques in today's Sarajevo, which were like the really nice examples of Ottoman architecture and art in today Bosnia and Herzegovina. As we know, in Islamic culture, they don't paint human figures like they do in Christianity, but these really nice geometric ornaments still survive until today. And I'll just browse through several of really nice mosques in Foča, in Banja Luka, in Mostar, done by different feudal lords. Some of these were Islamic art also influenced some of the Christian churches, so we can see these elements of Islamic art in the Christian architecture also. Like in Monastery Moštanica with these arcs and portals or doorways. Even in some of the reliquaries where the remnants of the saints were being kept, were influenced by the Islamic art. This is somewhat of an atypical mosque called the Colored Mosque in Travnik, still surviving today. And it was painted from the outside with these really nice, intricate geometric and floral patterns. In Islamic arts, during the Ottoman period, tekyas, which were like schools, were built. This is below that city of Blagaj that I showed recently, which was built for the Dervish order near Mostar. And one of the characteristics were the clock towers that were built in basically every city in Bosnia during the Ottoman Empire. Not only did it show time, but it was used to determine hourly schedule of the daily prayers. These are some surviving in town in Gračanica and Nevesinje. They also built hammams, which were like the public bathhouses. This one surviving in Sarajevo, also built by Gazi Husrevbeg. They built marketplaces, this one being the Bursa Bezistan, which was used for silk trade from Bursa in Asia Minor today. And a lot of caravan sarais were built called Han in the local languages. The only one surviving is in Sarajevo today in the 17th century, which were like places, hotels, inns where travelers would meet and trade their goods and ideas throughout between East and West. The second UNESCO World Heritage Site is this bridge, the bridge of Mehmed Pasha Sokolovic, which near Visegrad, which is was built by one of the most important engineers of the Ottoman Empire and still surviving today. Ottomans built a lot of bridges and improved the road infrastructure throughout Bosnia. The third and the final UNESCO World Heritage Site is the old bridge in the old town in Mostar. Really beautiful place that we can see on this picture. Also, houses of the aristocratic or rich class of the Bosnian Ottoman society had their artistic were done in the artistic manner. As we can see in the Srpska house, this is the typical interior of the aristocratic Ottoman house in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They also did the painted inscriptions. These are parts of Quran of Grand Vizier Mehmed Pasha Sokolovic, which ordered the bridge in Visegrad. And some of them were copied from the big artistic centers in Ottoman Empire, such as Cairo or Damascus. In Banja Luka, in my city, the sajjadas, the prayer carpets, were done in a unique way with these floral motifs that reflect the so-called Baroque currents that appeared in Istanbul in 17th and 18th century in Ottoman Empire. These were like two examples of those. Jews also migrated to Bosnia, and as we can see, it was a very multicultural society. After the Spain was reconquered by the Christians, they expelled the Jews and they moved to Bosnia. Ottoman Empire embraced them, and there were large Jewish communities that survived until the unfortunate events of Second World War. The Sarajevo Haggadah is one of the most important manuscripts of that time. It was brought by Cohen family in Sarajevo, and it is very, very richly decorated. Today kept in National Museum in Sarajevo and was part of the big exhibition in Metropolitan Museum a few years ago. They built synagogues all over Bosnia and Herzegovina, some of them surviving today, such as the old synagogue in Sarajevo. This is their interior, now a Jewish museum. And the oldest tombstones are from the 17th century in the Sarajevo cemetery. Because of the Ottoman Empire didn't allow religious freedoms until later, the Christians built like these really simple wooden churches because they weren't rich to build the stone structures. So a lot of these stone churches, a lot of these wooden churches still survive until today with these very, I will also use the word primitive, but these were done by the self-taught masters building, painted by the influence of Byzantine tradition, these pictures of saints on woods. Also one of the examples of those churches. Also, mosques were built in this type of manner. Once the Ottoman Empire became economically weaker, it reflected on the architecture of mosque building. The so-called Julhan Hati Sharif was really important because it made every religion equal in Ottoman Empire and was part of the series of reforms that late Ottoman sultans did in the Ottoman Empire, which resulted in the increase of artistic production, mainly in architecture. So we see this church in Chajnice, which held the venerated so-called miracle icon of the Mother of God. And these icons from the museum in Chajnice, which survived from the late Middle Ages and early 16th century. Today, this is the typical icon of the saint with, in this case, Saint George, with the scenes from his life painted in these small miniatures around. Also, some of the painters are known from that period. This is the icon of Saint Nicholas, and these are some of the examples of the religious painting from that time. Also, a lot of people started to go to the Jerusalem to pilgrimage and painted these kind of pilgrimage icons, devotional icons that were given to the church. Churches were built in a modern manner now, with this iconostasis, which is the architectural construction that separates the altar space, which is behind, from the space where the worshippers stand, and the biggest one being built in Sarajevo, of course, in the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we can see that the architecture production increased in this period. This is the painting from the interior. Also, Western art influenced Islamic art in Bosnia and Herzegovina, so we can see these neoclassical elements even in mosque buildings, such as this mosque near Brčko town. Also, in this time we see the rise of bourgeoisie, and rich merchant families started building their own houses, influenced by the Western Europe. As we can see, the most famous example with this neoclassical or neo-Renaissance building and facade, the Espich House, which was decorated by the combination of Eastern and Western furniture inside. And this was the house where the first theater was introduced, modern day theater was introduced in Sarajevo, and so on and so on. So the rise of new class began in this time. Catholic Cathedral was also erected in Sarajevo as a consequence of Julhana Hati Sharif, and we can see that Sarajevo started to look like what it is today in this period. After the Ottoman, after Austro-Hungary came, there was this unique style that was being promoted by the Austro-Hungarian government, and it was sort of like a called pseudo-Maverick style, and it was used for the civil buildings, such as the national government of Sarajevo, which basically tried to invent a new style that was somehow connection between East and West in architectural sense. So Brčko Town Hall was designed in this way, gymnasium in Mostar, and we see that Austro-Hungarians also built civil structures based on Western European models. This one was the old railway station in Banja Luka, which connected Bosnia with Vienna, the capital of Austro-Hungarian Empire, and today's Museum of Contemporary Art. Hotels were made, also influenced under the West, the so-called academic style or historical style. Bishops' palaces were influenced, combination between Byzantine art and the Western art. And this is a time where we see typical churches being built like on the same model built throughout Bosnia and Herzegovina, this one being the example, also combination between East and West. Bishop's Palace in Mostar with this neoclassical element, the neo-Renaissance element, like this really calm and harmonic facade, this one being in Mostar. Also, this is the first time where during the Austro-Hungarian period where we can start to talk about modern art and modern architecture. This one is influenced by the secession movement in Vienna, and we see the influence of Adolf Loos, one of the Viennese architects and theoretics of art, who said that ornament is a crime, and he wanted to clean facades. And one of these examples is the Cinema Partizan or Cinema Apollo, built by Ludwig Huber in Sarajevo. Printing became basically, now we can talk about art in Western European sense, because artists were starting to go to Vienna, Paris, Munich, and to be taught at the Western academies. So they would come back and paint the local landscapes, either in traditional or realistic ways, such as this waterfall in Jajce, published in Nada magazine. And also magazines were, in production of illustrated magazines were done, were increased in the Austro-Hungarian times, and a lot of artists were employed to decorate them. But we can talk now about these landscapes that were typical, for the realistic art in Western. And as we can see, this Franz Leo Rubens Baščaršija, which is the center of Sarajevo, done in that manner. So like typical realistic paintings from the late 19th century, or Anastas Bocarić portrait of merchant Ivanišević, today kept in National Gallery of Bosnia and Herzegovina in Sarajevo. So typical realistic painting with not a lot of influences of modern art. Who would introduce somehow a modern art and modern looks of seeing painting was Gabriel Jurkic, who could see the Impressionist and Impressionist work and post-Impressionist work in the Vienna and cities that he traveled through during his studies. And we can see somehow the introduction of modern art in his landscape paintings. These were also done in the early 20th century. After World War I, Bosnia became a part of Yugoslavia. So we can talk about two Yugoslavias. First one being the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, which lasted between two world wars, and the other one being the Socialist Yugoslavia or the Communist Yugoslavia, which existed from Second World War until early 90s, where Yugoslavia collapsed in a violent way and Bosnia once again became an independent state. This marked new epochs in its arts, first of all in architecture also, where we can see this continuation of Western influences in Bosnian art, but mixed together with some of the local historical traditions, Byzantine or Neo-Renaissance or Gothic. This one was being done by one of the first female architects in Yugoslavia, Javanka Bončić-Katrić, and it's an example that even though most arts were dominated by men, there were still some female artists present in them. This one being in architecture. The sculptures were done by the models of George Jovanović, one of the leading sculptors from Yugoslavia. So to talk about Bosnian art in this period is really to talk about Yugoslav art, because Bosnia wasn't independent from basically late Middle Ages until the 90s. It was always part of some empire or kingdom, either Ottoman or Austro-Hungarian, or part of kingdom or the Socialist Federation of Yugoslavia. So to talk about it, I'll just show you some examples of that time. But basically, the trends that you see here, you can see throughout all of Yugoslavia in contemporary times. This was the National Bank, done by Milan Zloković, an architect from Belgrade, who this is his typical like robust architecture, modern architecture introduced as a new trend in Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Also, these really modernistic geometrical architecture houses were built. This is the building of the Red Cross in Sarajevo, done by Helen Batasar, or this yacht skyscraper. Yacht is the airline company of Yugoslavia, and it was built on the place where mosque once stood. So we can see that Bosnia became more secular country and gave space more to the in this period more to the civil architecture than it did for the religious architecture. In this time, also we can see glimpses of modern art creeping into the painting. Raman Petrovic, who also did religious paintings, did some kind of these proto-modernistic self-portraits with social connotations, depicting the street children, because a lot of Yugoslavia was a poor country. It came out of First World War with its population decimated, Bosnia being one of the poorest parts of Yugoslavia compared to Serbia, Slovenia, or Croatia. That's why the Communist Party had a lot of influence in these impoverished areas where workers would work for really low wages, and the Communist Party saw the opportunity to exploit that, and really had a really good stronghold also in Bosnia. Jovan Bijelic was a painter born in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but spent most of his career in Belgrade after finishing his studies in Paris. And we can see this like really modernistic paintings now. And he would always paint, often paint his the landscapes of his childhood. And he was one of the most prominent painters of the time, as we can see in these landscapes that are being kept in his memorial museum in Petrovac in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But his best pieces are currently in Belgrade and in Novi Sad. Lazar Drljača also painting these modernistic aquarelles of Treskavica Mountain or the shepherds. As I said, Bosnia is a mountainous area, so there are a lot of agriculture still going on, especially shepherds and herders who still live semi-nomadically even today. So these are like the typical landscapes of Bosnia, which were popular at that time. Spiro Bocaric, brat of previously mentioned Anastas, would also paint. He would go throughout Bosnia painting the local folklore and local customs in this pointillistic technique. Vladimir Bercic, one of the most prominent painters who would live near Sarajevo, but most of his career was done in Zagreb in modern day Croatia, would also introduce new modernistic trends in Bosnian art. Vojo Dimitrijević, one of the artists who later on joined the resistance movement of Communist Party in the Second World War, would become the leading painter of the communist era, and his son is a really interesting figure, which I will talk about a little bit more. But Vojo Dimitrijević, also one of the members of the early modern art in Bosnia and Herzegovina, who would shift his artistic style to socialist realism after Second World War. Mica Todorović, one of the first academics, female academics of the Yugoslav Academy of Arts and Sciences, was one of the few female painters from time, and as we can see, she did really nice watercolors, oils, that also contain the elements of the early modern expressionist paintings or post-impressionists. So she did a kind of a combination of different styles that she managed to see in the Western artistic trends. After Second World War, the Communist Party came into power and Bosnia became Yugoslavia in small, meaning that the mixture of both Croats, Serbs, Bosniaks lived together with a lot of mixed marriages, and it was really one of the most tolerant societies at that time. And unfortunately, it broke in a violent way in the 90s. One of the Sarajevo became a big construction site, and we can see these brutalistic architecture, so-called brutalistic architecture that was showcased in the MoMA exhibition in New York a few years ago. I suggest that you look up, if you're interested in architecture and art in the communist Yugoslavia. Look up Museum of Modern Arts in New York exhibition from Concrete Utopia, because it's a really, really good example of how it looked back in the day. It reflects on civil structures, government structures, sports structures, and all the way to the living and to the life on the streets. Skenderia is one of the sport halls that was built in that time. The current Parliament building built by Juraj Neidhardt, which is one of the most prominent architects of the time, introduced contemporary architecture in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And now we come to something that the Communist Party replaced sort of religion with. They built a lot of these cultural monuments all over Yugoslavia in the places of memorial significance. They were built usually outside of city centers, where the resistance movement started in each part of the country. So this is in Banja Luka, in my town, distinct from city centers in one hill, where they organized the resistance movement in this region of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it was done in this pyramidic shape with reliefs of resistance and scenes from resistance done on the sides of this monument. It combines sculpture and architecture in a really unique way, and it was sort of places where people would meet during the holidays, and because they were usually located in natural landscapes. One of the most beautiful of these monuments in Yugoslavia is in Bosnia, in Tijantište. As you can see, really, really nice combination of sculpture and a live landscape surrounding it. This was the memorial complex of the famous Battle of Sutjeska, where a lot of there was a big clash between occupational forces and the partisan resistance movement, or this one in Kozara, where a lot of people who fled to mountain of Kozara were being surrounded by the Germans and unfortunately killed. They were all done by the most prominent Yugoslav artists from that time, usually sculptors and architects. And you can find them in each republic of ex-Yugoslavia, and their current state today reflects more or less the current government's view on the socialistic heritage of the time. They all commemorated either important battles or important events in the Yugoslav history. And they're all done by the master artists of that time, and they're really monumental in their size. And I suggest also you look them up. You will find most of them in the exhibition in MoMA that I talked about. But these are some of the key examples of that art in Bosnia and Herzegovina, still surviving today. As for painting at first became socialist realistic. In 1948, so really after the 3 years only after the finish of Second World War, Tito and Stalin got into a fight and separated. And that meant a lot for Yugoslav art, consequently for Bosnian art, because Yugoslavia stopped doing only these kind of socialist realistic art that could be seen in the Soviet Union. Ismet Mujezinović, we can see that Ismet Mujezinovic's painting, which is like really socialist realistic, to go to a little bit of abstraction in its works later on. Salim Obralic also, so like really abstract landscape which couldn't be seen in the USSR, for example, at that time. Stoyan Čelić with his geometrical abstract painting. So I'm just naming a few of the painters who were born in Bosnia, but most of them we need to look as a Yugoslav art or Yugoslav cultural space, because most of them worked either in Belgrade or Zagreb, but big cities and artistic centers. Sculpture also shifted from socialist realism to some kind of abstract painting. But as I said, sculpture was either had a commemorative role, such as this bust of Milutin Milankovic, a famous scientist from Yugoslavia, done by Sreten Stojanovic, or these monuments. This is Sreten Stojanovic was a sculptor who did this commemorative sculpture of his brother, who was one of the leaders of resistance movements in the northwestern region of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we can still see if the sculpture is being done as a commemorative, where it commemorates a certain individual, it was done in socialist realistic way. But if we just briefly go back to this and see this as a sculpture of a famous event, it goes beyond socialist realism. It goes in abstract way, and the artistic expression was given to the author in its fullest here. So both trends, or this Mother and Child, which is also done in socialist realistic manner. So we can see that the government gave artists a lot of freedom in their artistic expression, especially if we take into consideration that this was a communist country. I was talking about, we're still in the period of communist Yugoslavia, and I was talking about Voja Dimitrijević. This is his son. This is, and I'm going to talk about him. I don't know if we can look at him even as a Yugoslav artist, because he's a world-renowned artist, born in Sarajevo, currently living in Paris, still alive and still working. He was the one of the people who introduced conceptual art, and somebody who put Yugoslav art and of course Bosnian art in that manner to contemporary levels, and made it worldwide. So he moved to Paris, made a big name of himself. If you heard about Marina Abramovic, she was also one of the artists from Yugoslavia who became a world-renowned artist and somebody who dictated the trends of world art today. His concept of random passerbys from 1971 introduced these public big printed images of people. And so these spaces were usually reserved for communist officials. You could see this in contemporary China, for example. But these were just like normal people. He would take photographs of normal people and put them like they were some kind of important persons. And he would do, this is art in public space. And it was really, really revolutionary for that time, especially if we take into consideration that this was done for in the communist country. Or one of his post-historical triptychs, where he combines famous art pieces. His latest book, his autobiography, says Louvre is my studio and the street is my museum. He would use these kind of interventions, taking a famous historical painting, an object or something alive, and put them as a form of a triptych, as some sort of contemporary art, new contemporary art language. So Braco Dimitrijević, even though he was born in Bosnia and we can somehow connect him to Bosnian art, was basically one of the Bosnian artists who made it big time in the world and still is one of the most prominent world artists today. After collapse of Yugoslavia, Bosnia and Herzegovina became an independent state, and this is the first time after medieval times that it became an independent state, and its art currents shifted toward global art trends and remain so until today. In Yugoslavia, the art was financed by the state, and so a lot of artists were state sponsored. Braco Dimitrijević, Marina Abramović, and several others Yugoslav artists who shifted toward contemporary art at that time were something different. But after collapse of Yugoslavia, the financing was left out. So contemporary Bosnian society is very divided, as I said at the beginning of my lecture, and it doesn't have a stable financial system in investing into art, and it doesn't have an art market. So we still see, I will just showcase 4 contemporary Bosnian artists today who have an international career and are not a product of, let's say, state investment into arts, but rather their individual success, which they have done. First of them being Mladen Banjac, with his Garden of Earthly Delights, showcased at Venice Biennale in 2013. He's an artist who mostly does paintings in marble, typical for tombstones of contemporary art Bosnia. And this is a reflection of Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights. He also does performance art, sculpture, drawings, video art, and so on and so on. One of the artists worth researching into. Second one being Sheila Kameric, who did a conceptual series called Bosnian Girl, who dealt with who introduced feminist theories into Bosnian art, and who started to break the stigma of women in Bosnian societies. Because as we saw throughout history, females weren't represented not nearly enough and were often oppressed in Bosnia and Herzegovina. She wants to break this stigma doing her art. One of the artists who also dealt in the subject of Japan was Radenko Milak. His project of University of Disaster was showcased in 2017 Biennale. He paints these monochromatic watercolors, and his project started on the theories of Paul Virilio called University of Disaster, and he says that basically in the contemporary art we don't see enough artist reflections on the big disasters, such as the bombing of Hiroshima or the tragedies of the Second World War in Europe, or the big floods, or big natural disasters that are happening today. So in his series of art, he wants to bring back those memories, and he wants to talk about that through his artistic pieces. This was the idea of University of Disaster. His cycluses are various, but always done in more or less same collages of black and white watercolors. That one of the examples as we see here. And probably the most, the newest and youngest and the most trendy artist from Bosnia and Herzegovina is Selman, performance artist who is currently the most popular Bosnian artist. And with I suggest you see her website and introduce yourself to her art. She's a member of, not only is she being a woman, which is sad enough in Bosnian society, but she's also a member of Roma population, which was repressed throughout history and discriminated throughout history of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Her family is a family that deals in iron, in recycling iron in a really not in contemporary healthy way, but they basically scavenge iron cars or metal pieces. And that way of life, which is really unhealthy, discriminative, derogatory, she transferred to her performances, and she introduces her family and herself into new artistic performances being done all over the world today, and one of the artists who is currently most worth looking into. These are some of the resources, and I'm sorry to have taken a lot of this time, more than 60 minutes that it was required. I hope you don't judge me for that. But some of the websites that I suggest you look into, these are basically the most important museums in Bosnia and Herzegovina and most important academies of art. So maybe you will find something of interest to you, and feel free to contact me on any subject of this short but lengthy lecture that I have tried to give to you, and to introduce you to Bosnia and Herzegovina and its art throughout ages. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Oh, it was great to have such an intense, long history in short time. It must be so hard for you to make it short, to have such an academical education.
Yeah, I think it's important to see every aspect of Bosnian history, and there's a lot of research to be done. The country is rich in heritage, and for me it was important to look at all of its aspects, even though so briefly. But if any of you or your students wish to research it any further, feel free to contact me, and I will be more than helpful to more than grateful to help in any way possible.
It's great to know about so long the rich culture, because for Japanese people, we maybe only know about this the 20th century is like disaster time. But you know, there's so much rich culture you showed me that was happening before this time. It's totally complex of this culture, language, the race, and also the borders of the nationalities. It's totally mixed, and it's quite complicated, huh?
Yeah, it is quite complicated. It's complicated to understand. The situation is still somewhat complicated, even though Bosnia is really open country and a democratic country in that sense, with a lot of tourism, with a lot of foreign tourists. And I suggest all of your students, or you, if you are traveling in this region, definitely come. I didn't mention the most important artistic product of Bosnia, which is its cuisine, which is really nice. So the food in Bosnia is really amazing. The people are warm and welcoming, and it's all a consequence of this intense mixture of cultures that went through millennia and shaped what is Bosnia and Herzegovina today. The war has passed. The country rebuilt itself. We're looking forward to joining the European Union as soon as possible. And it has very nice climate. It's rich in history. It's rich in cultural heritage, and definitely something worth exploring.
True. The last few pages about the topic about more like international or universal the themes and so on, because now we are getting into this global era. And for you to do you still define your identity or nationalities, or this kind of like nationalistic the aspect?
Nationalistic aspect is somewhat of a complicated subject here, because the country is divided between Serbs, Croats, in population-wise, between Serbian population, Croatian population, Bosniak population, with some minorities also, and everybody has its own identity. So the Bosnian identity is not fully developed yet, and I don't know if it will happen or not, but I can see it. But I don't see it as an issue. I see it as a plus, because a lot of different cultures are able to coexist even after these violent times with each other, and we can see that reflected into art. Art has the artists who have succeeded were the artists who deal in universal subjects. And the subjects that are most universal now are the problems of re-questioning our history, re-questioning the impact that we have today, most importantly, climate changes. And because Bosnia and Herzegovina is a really rich country that is being exploited from its resources, be it water, raw materials, forests, and whatnot. And I think the artistic response needs to come there first. We now have a lot of debates about the lithium being one of the potentials for the future, for the shift towards green policies, but also it leaves the landscape devastated. So I think there are more important aspects to talk about than nationalities or identities. The most important is the social justice, the health system, which has been shaken up during COVID period, and of course to keep this land green and beautiful as it is now. But because if we exploit it if we don't exploit it without plans or without any meaningful results, we will have the land that was once beautiful, we will have it barren and inhospitable for people to live in.
True. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. 飯田先生、何かありましたらどうぞ。もし大丈夫だったらこのまま終わりの方に向かってきます。
ちょっと一個だけ聞きたいことがあって。
はい。どうぞどうぞ。
日本語でもいいってちゃんと。
いや、大丈夫、大丈夫。
ユーゴスラビアのその紛争が、すごいその現代美術のコンセプトに、対立とか紛争とか、そういうテーマを与えてたような感じがする。で、なんかそれが、現在はその平和とか調和とか、なんかそういうものが流れてるような気がして、そういうのを感じてるんだけど、日本にいて。そういうのは、その、セルビアの人にとってそういうのを感じたりするのかっていうのを聞いてほしい。
He feels like in the era of the Yugoslavic, the war or the terrible time, this gave to the contemporary the market about like I don't know the also stigma, but also making the conflict in the market. But nowadays the contemporary art market is more showing like a peace or love or like being more like unified and so on. What would you guess about it, and what do you think now and a little bit past in this Yugoslavic time in the art industry and also near future?
Well, it's a difficult subject.
Yeah, right.
First of all, as I said, before collapse of Yugoslavia, most of the art was financed by the state. And in that sense, if you were an artist, you were lucky to get some kind of commission from the state. Art wasn't bought by regular people in a Western sense. So in that sense, we have a gap of 50 years of art market not being developed. And in the way it has been developed in contemporary Western societies or in Japan. After the collapse of Yugoslavia, even that small finance, so artists in communist time were doing art not in a commercial way, because they didn't feel that they'll be able to sell it in a contemporary capitalistic way of thinking. So after communism fell and capitalism crept in, all of the ex-Yugoslavian countries found themselves without developed art market. Some of the republics managed to develop the art market, especially Slovenia. Serbia and Croatia are starting to develop their art markets now, but in Bosnia, there were several attempts, but none of them were successful. So in contemporary Bosnia and Herzegovina, you don't have like a single good gallery, private owned gallery, which would represent its own artists. So what does that mean for the artists? They are usually forced to look elsewhere to sell their art. All of the artists that I have showed are not present in any of the Bosnian galleries because there are none. And that means that the artist, in a sense, I mean, these are very successful artists. Radenko Milak is, as we speak now, in the Sao Paulo Biennale, which is one of the biggest contemporary art events in the world. Mladen is showcased in a lot of galleries in Europe. Radenko also. Selma Selman is recently had exhibition in Fridericianum in Kassel. She had exhibitions in Rome. So like these are like top class artists, but not represented in their own country. They have to sort of make some, I'm not saying that they are making, but in my sense, the artists are forced to make some sort of compromise to make themselves attractive to foreign art markets. Which is in a sense good, because the contemporary art, as we said, is universal. It's a global thing, but it sometimes lacks the local element, and we don't have that local element as present anymore. And I'm afraid if we continue to do so, artists, we are happy that all of these artists, except for Selma Selman, are living in Bosnia today. They're producing art in Bosnia, but they're not producing it for Bosnia, for Bosnian market. They're producing it for a worldwide global art market. And they're rarely showcased in Bosnia. So there are not many exhibitions about them here, because they're usually either too expensive for Bosnian Bosnian conditions, or they don't want them, because sometimes they deal in subjects that are really sensitive in Bosnia. And in that way, if something doesn't change, I'm afraid that all of the successful contemporary artists will just leapfrog the local element and go strictly to the contemporary art artistic scene.
So that your museum have a lot of tasks that to archive the history and also making the history right now to not to be this way, but also balance, not only geopolitical things, but also the natural global world aspect.
What we try to do in museum, I work in the Museum of Contemporary Art of Republika Srpska, and what we try to do is to show something, because the region is still culturally connected. Ex-Yugoslavia is really culturally connected. The language is pretty much the same everywhere. There is a lot of cultural exchange still going on, and it will be forever so. And we always try to showcase what is interesting in the region. We also try to produce an exhibition of a local artist to see, to showcase our own local artists. And both Radenko and Mladen's Pavilion in Venice Biennale were done in production with our museum. We try to talk about the sensitive topics such as climate change today. And we need to make a really delicate balance of all the, and I must complain a little bit, we do this with very, very little programming money. I mean, that's like our budget is really, really small. We could do so much more, but the country is poor and the investment in culture is really small. It's below UNESCO's proposed 1% of GDP invested into culture. Bosnia doesn't invest that much in culture. Compared to Yugoslavia, who invested at certain points 10% of its GDP into arts and culture. So you can imagine the gap now.
But that's the controlled one, controlled art. That's why it has 10%.
It was controlled, but not in an oppressive sense. They were commissioned. It was controlled in a sense. You build a monument on this specific site of the battle, but how you are going to do it? The government doesn't. They don't censor it in that way. A lot of artists from Yugoslavia managed to make careers outside of Yugoslavia, and they have managed to put art produced in Yugoslavia for the Yugoslavian market in a world-class level, such as group. But they were mostly, I didn't talk about them because they were stationed in either in Belgrade, Zagreb, or in Ljubljana in Slovenia. The group Mediala, for example, painters Petar Lubarda, Group Irvin from Slovenia, Exact or Gorgona Group from Zagreb. These were all important movements inside Yugoslavia that curators from the West today are starting to explore. After the collapse of the Iron Curtain, a lot of curators from the West came to ex-Eastern blocs and to Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia somewhat later because of the war, and they're now starting to research what was happening in this period. So some of the artists who were really well known and could live in Yugoslavia didn't need to, but produced art on a contemporary level, didn't need to showcase it in Paris or in New York or in Tokyo. They had enough support here. And now the Western curators and the Western museums are starting to rediscover art from the 50s, 60s, 70s in Yugoslavia, produced in Yugoslavia, and are including them in their collections in museums worldwide. MoMA exhibition is one of the good examples on how it is being done. Irving Group from Slovenia did artistic researches and mapping the Eastern European art as their kind of artistic project, and it's also something worth looking into. So it's a little bit complex to talk about only Bosnia because as we saw, but it's a much bigger cultural space, and that we are talking here.
Japanese also must study about this, the Bosnia, Balkan, and the Yugo areas. And Japan should have the exhibitions too,
Yeah, definitely. We have a really good cooperation with the Japanese embassy, and people in Bosnia are familiar with Japan's culture and arts, mostly popular arts such as anime and manga, but also the programs that the Japanese embassy does, the Days of Japan in Bosnia and Herzegovina, introduced contemporary music, arts. In our museum we had 2 or 3 exhibitions about Japanese art, mostly prints, contemporary prints, and we also have in our collection some of the Japanese artists who studied in Paris in the 70s or 60s, 70s or 80s. So yeah, albeit small, 1 or 2 pieces, but people are interested and are willing. Also, I love the program that you do to introduce to your students artistic trends of Europe that are not mainstream. That is something that we also in Europe need to do, because we see art as a Western thing, and not a lot of people are introduced to Far Eastern art or pre-Columbian America or African art. So this is like a two-way street, and I'm glad that these programs are here to kind of talk. If the contemporary technology allows us to exchange these ideas and information in really cheap and easy way, and I encourage you all to reach out to me to see if there's anything else interesting that you might want to research in this part of Europe, and I will definitely encourage my students to do the same back in Japan.
Yeah, thank you. Let's make this the lecture and time gonna be a milestone for the future.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Alright. それではじゃあ終わってにしていきましょうか。Okay, thank you, Mr. Mladen Banjac. We had a really great time.
Thank you very much for having me. Hope this was interesting enough for you.
Very much. It's so intense. We should concentrate more on the study again. It was great.
Please come in Japan.
Yeah, come to Japan.
I've been to Japan. I'm definitely coming back again.
Yeah.
Oh yes, please.
I've been to Kyoto for 10 days, but I need to go to Tokyo also.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. We are welcome. Alright. では、飯田先生、終わりにしていきましょうか。お願いします。
ムランデンさん、ありがとうございました。ということで、また次の機会にお話を伺えればなと思います。本日ありがとうございました。Thank you very much.
ありがとう。Thank you. Bye bye.
バイバイ。
はい。ということで。